In this lecture, we are going to discuss assessing AI systems. If you think back to several lectures ago, we had a roadmap for all of the different assessments that we were going to go over. And that multiple part series on different types of privacy impact assessments or privacy assessments, that ends here. And so this is our final in that series, and we're going to be talking about AI. Now, a quick note here that if you have or are thinking about taking the Artificial Intelligence Governance Professional course that I also offer on Udemy, a quick note that what you see in that course and what you're going to see here is a little different. There's not a complete one-for-one overlap, and so just keep that in mind. In this lecture, we will first define what artificial intelligence is at a very high level. We will discuss some of the challenges in assessing AI systems. We will go over a few considerations concerning privacy and the use of artificial intelligence. And then we will end by looking at a short list of AI governance frameworks. So what is artificial intelligence? Well, for the CIPM exam, you don't need to know a lot. All you need to know is that artificial intelligence is an algorithm-based technology. It more or less acts autonomously, and it carries out actions previously thought to require human intelligence. Now, there's actually a whole lot more to artificial intelligence than just this. And again, if you intend to take the AI GP certification masterclass that I offer here on Udemy, you're going to learn a whole lot more. Otherwise, this is all you need to know for the CIPM exam. There are several challenges when it comes to assessing or working with systems that utilize artificial intelligence. The first concerns lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Bias is inherent in humans, in human civilization, and therefore in the data that we produce. Artificial intelligence thrives on data, and in fact, data is central to artificial intelligence systems. Therefore, many AI systems are going to carry on the biases that are inherent not only in their creators, us humans, but also in the data that they are trained on. And so that's a very big topic. People are devoting their entire careers to tackling this problem. But again, for the CIPM exam, all you need to know is that this is a challenge. Because of that inherent bias, AI systems will reflect the same types of discrimination that we see throughout society. Also concerning fairness and transparency, the decision-making process behind a lot of AI systems is a black box in nature. Essentially what that means is that when researchers peek under the hood to see what's going on within AI systems, when these researchers are trying to determine how or why they made a certain decision, it's very difficult for them to do so. So AI systems aren't a black box in the sense that we have no idea what's going on. It just means that it's not very clear why what is happening is happening. Finally, the algorithms that are powering AI technology and the data that goes into training them is considered proprietary by a lot of the big tech companies. That proprietary nature makes it even more difficult for researchers to find out how these systems are operating in the way that they are. Just a moment ago, we spoke about how data is central to artificial intelligence systems, and this isn't just a small amount of data, but a massive amount of data. GPT-3, for example, was trained on 45 terabits of data. Because massive amounts of data are necessary for these models to succeed and be sufficiently trained, fair information practice principles such as data minimization and purpose limitation are essentially no-goes. Similarly, the processing purpose for these systems is often difficult to define. This is because sometimes researchers aren't quite sure what's going to happen with a model, for example, how it will respond to certain tasks, until after that model has been trained. Other challenges include integrity, confidentiality, and security. The creation of the data pipelines necessary to train AI models exposes the underlying data to a lot of risk. And then, once those models are operational and made available to the public, they're susceptible to machine learning privacy attacks. Two attacks you need to be familiar with are model inversion attacks and membership inference attacks. Now, you don't need to know how these work for the exam. You just need to know that these are two types of machine learning privacy attacks. From a privacy professional's point of view, there are a few things that you should consider when it comes to AI and privacy. First, if you have the opportunity to sit on a team that is developing a system from scratch, or perhaps in talks with a vendor to procure a system, these are some considerations that you're going to want to bring to the table. First, the system that you're developing or procuring should satisfy a specific legitimate purpose. What is the business problem that your organization is facing that they hope this system will help them solve? Second, throughout the development or procurement process, you want to take the time to identify, assess, and mitigate risk. Some common types of risk that we've already talked about or that you've likely seen in the headlines include bias, discrimination, and hallucinations. We discussed just a moment ago that AI systems are trained on massive amounts of data. That data comes from humans, and humans are inherently biased. These biases manifest themselves in discrimination. It's only natural then that the systems that we create will reflect these biases and discrimination from time to time. And so how can you work with the system developers or with the vendors to ensure that bias and discrimination has been screened out of the system? Another type of risk that you've likely seen in the headlines is hallucinations. An AI system hallucinates when it produces text or some other content that appears to be factual, but indeed is not. You may ask an AI system for legal advice, for example, and ask it for a specific example, and it may provide you with an example that looks like it's come from the newspaper or from a case study book, but actually the system has made it all up and none of it is factual. That is an example of a hallucination. Again, when you're working with the system developer or with the vendor, you're going to want to identify hallucinations as a risk and work with the vendor to see how this type of risk has been weaned out of the system. Third, we always want to make sure that for any important decisions that are going to have a significant impact on an individual's well-being, perhaps on their civil rights or liberties or freedoms, that there is human consideration, alternative, and fallback. Essentially, what that means is that the individual who is first interfacing with an AI system, if that person receives a decision that they don't like or they feel is unfair, that individual has the option to appeal their decision to a human. Another set of important considerations is transparency, explainability, and interpretability. Now, explainability and interpretability are fields of AI research where researchers are trying to understand how AI systems are reasoning and why they make the decisions they do. This is still a rather young field of research in the sense that there are many more problems right now than there are solutions. In the absence of full explainability and interpretability, it's important that organizations are transparent, meaning that we explain as much as we can, while also explaining what we don't know or what we can't explain. Another important consideration, and this is for any project management team, is that that team is constituted by team members who represent a diversity of viewpoints, backgrounds, and experiences. The more diversity we have on our team, the more input we're going to get, and the better that final product is going to be as a result of that diversity. Our second to last consideration is notice. Whenever anyone is interacting with an AI system, they should receive notice that their inputs are going into an AI system and that outputs are being generated by an AI system. And finally, when working with data, when preparing it for an AI model for training, your organization might consider privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs. And different PETs that you might consider are differential privacy, synthetic data, and federated learning. For the CIPM exam, you don't need to know what differential privacy, synthetic data, or federated learning are. You just need to know that those are examples of privacy-enhancing technologies. Our final slide concerns different AI governance frameworks. And for the CIPM exam, you only need to know at a very high level that these are different frameworks. I can imagine that on the exam, you may be given a question that asks you to identify an AI governance framework. or a question that gives you 4 choices and you're asked to identify which one is not an AI governance framework. And so if you had 3 of the choices on the screen plus ISO 29134, then hopefully you would identify ISO 29134 as not being an AI governance framework, because that's a framework for PIAs. The AI governance frameworks that you should know for the CIPM exam are the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority, or EIOPA, Consultative Expert Group on Digital Ethics. And this is the first time I have ever seen that framework. That one is not included on the AIGP. 3 other frameworks include the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, the ISO IEC 42001 AI Management Systems, and the ISO IEC 23894 AI Guidance on Risk Management. In this lecture, we went over assessing AI systems. For the CIPM exam, you need to remember that artificial intelligence is algorithm-based technology. It acts autonomously, and it carries out actions previously thought to require human intelligence. Challenges include lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, data minimization and purpose limitation, integrity, confidentiality, and security. When it comes to assessing AI systems with privacy in mind, you should have the following considerations. The systems should satisfy a specific legitimate purpose. You need to identify, assess, and mitigate risk. There should always be in place human considerations, alternative, and fallback. Consider transparency, explainability, and interpretability. Your project management team should be diverse, inclusive, and promote accessibility. Individuals interacting with an AI system should always receive notice. And when preparing the training dataset, you might consider privacy-enhancing technologies. And finally, I won't read through the list of AI governance frameworks here, but you should be prepared to identify these on the exam should you see them.